Welcome to Entrepreneurs Conquering the World, how to build a global audience and profit from it. With your host, Carmen Ring.
Hello, this is Carmen Ring, the host for this summit. And today I have here Christian Hoeferle. Christian is the owner and founder of the Culture Mastery, a consulting company specialized in cross-cultural businesses. Now, I'm going to let him do the introduction and tell you more about it. How are you, Christian? Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me, Carmen, and thank you for your excellent pronunciation of my name, which, if you work internationally, your name can be the first roadblock to building a connection with the people that you try to work together. My name is from the German language because I was born and raised in Germany, and it has a letter with, well, it's a letter that does not exist in every language. It's mainly for German language and some Scandinavian languages that have that letter, and the pronunciation is not always easy for people who don't speak our language. So thank you, good job.
Thank you. I actually took some German classes, so I am a bit familiar with it. So let's start by you telling us a little bit about your background and why and how you started Culture Mastery.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share that story here. As I said before, I am originally from Germany, and I grew up in what was then West Germany because our country was divided for, well, about 40 years as a result of World War II. And the Cold War that ensued after. And I was born to a small town family in the very south of Germany, south of Munich, north of the Alpine Ridge. The part of Germany that I grew up in is, for many people around the world, stereotypical for what Germany is like: the mountains, the lederhosen, the beer, the pretzels, the Oompa Oompa Tetere music. A lot of the stereotypes that people have of Germany, actually that's where I grew up. So some of the stereotypes are true, others maybe not so much. And I grew up in this small town to, can I say, a rather monocultural family. And when I say monocultural, I mean all they were familiar with was the environment in which they grew up. Small town, very conservative, predominantly Catholic, Christian. And I was always inspired to see a little more of the world. And when I was 16 years old, my parents allowed me, actually encouraged me to go abroad. And I had the privilege of becoming a foreign high school exchange student. And this was the first time that I came to the United States of America. And I came to the state of Minnesota. Minnesota, those in the north, they will understand what I'm talking about. It's very cold, it's very flat, and it's not very diverse. However, for me as a teenager, it was a very important experience because I learned that what I considered to be normal was not normal in another environment. And as I said earlier, monocultural is when people walk around life with these blinders on. We don't see left or right. And when I was 17, these blinders were taken off. I realized, wait a minute, there's a different way to live your life. There's a different set of normal. You can do things a different way and they still work. And you can have a different behavior and people still resonate with you. So this was a very eye-opening experience for me. And throughout my school and university and my first career as a journalist, I was able to utilize these experiences, and they set the course for me for the future. And in 2004, my family and I, we moved to the United States with the goal of spending 3-4 years abroad as a family. And my wife started a business. We started a very successful Montessori school in Tennessee, where we still live. and I started my cross-cultural consulting business. It is now called, as you said, the Culture Mastery. And it was brought about because there were so many international businesses in Tennessee, in the United States, in the area that I live in, and my family, my children grow up in. I thought it was important to offer a service to these international companies to help the company's organization and their employees understand what it means to be successful in a different cultural context when your normal doesn't work anymore. So what we do now is teach companies and their people, their employees, a new set of normal and how to, and see, every time I say that word, I do this, because normal in my book doesn't exist anymore. Normal is just setting on your washing machine. It's your rules that don't always work abroad. So our job is to help people be successful across cultures so that they can work better together, to inspire, to manage, to lead in a different cultural context. This is what we do.
Sounds wonderful. So this is how it all started, from your own experience. You know, you had to face, living in a totally different culture. You had to adapt all of a sudden. So, experience is the best teacher. Now, let's see, some of most of our audience is actually looking at expanding their own business in the international market. Therefore, they're going to have to, to interact with some different cultures. And, what would be the first challenges that you foresee? Like, let's tell them a little bit what to expect, so they don't get scared, so they know this is normal, the challenges that they're going to have, so they don't let that back them, pull them back from their ideas. Tell us about a company that's, a small company, say they want to reach, an international public. Maybe they're going to start with a country that speaks already the same language, say like Canada, France, like they'll go with French, or US with Australia, England. So let's say that the language barrier, it's not there yet, and it's going to come later. So we give them the challenges one by one. What can they expect, and what's the best way to handle these challenges?
Well, thank you for bringing up the language barrier, because usually that's the first big challenge people deal with.
That's why I wanted to say it, so we don't scare them so much from the beginning.
Yes, and even if you belong to the same language family, I would caution people. So if you're from Great Britain trying to do business in the United States, yes, you speak the same language, yet there are certain linguistic nuances that are quite different. And I think it was George Bernard Shaw, the Irish romancier, the Irish author, who once said, two cultures or two countries separated by a common language, the United States and Great Britain. So you may have the language in common, but it's the linguistic nuances and the behavioral differences that confuse people once in a while. So let's look at this example. Let's look at the United Kingdom, Great Britain, the old empire, and let's look at the so-called New World, Canada and the United States. Yes, there is a common language. However, there are behavioral differences. So for instance, the United States is a very individualistic culture, whereas Great Britain is not quite as individualistic. There is a sense of community that is a little more pronounced than you have it in the United States. Now, for us, coming from the mainland of Europe, I'm from Germany, you're from Romania, correct?
Yes.
So for us, the English and the American are very much more individualistic than us. So it always depends on the perspective that you're from. So when we compare cultures, we need to be aware of the first step is, what are my culture's behaviors? What are the values and belief systems that drive my behavior? So I can compare that to the behaviors of other cultures. The first step is know yourself. Learn about your own culture. Be aware of why you think things are normal. What defines your normal? What is normal for you? And then think about, why is it that So for me as a German, I know that most Germans are very cautious of taking risks. Risk is only good if we can calculate it and we can hedge it. And yes, that's a phenomenon we can describe. So the next step is, why are Germans like that? Well, you can argue they've had so many wars, they've started so many wars, and then they were involved in so many catastrophic events over the course of history that people in Germany learned over centuries, over generations, that even if you plan and even if you do everything right, there could be catastrophic events that change the game and wipe out everything you have. So there's a risk of losing things, a risk of failure. So risk is associated with, could be dangerous. Whereas in Anglo-Saxon culture in the UK and in North America, risk is seen as an opportunity. Oh, okay, if we challenge the status quo, if we do something differently, maybe we'll be more successful than the people who've done it that way all these years. So let's try something new. If we fail, okay, we'll try again. So the attitude towards uncertainty is something to be aware of. So if you're starting to take your business, your product, your services into a different culture, into a different market, you need to be aware of these behavioral preferences. If you present a cutting edge product that is new and challenges everything around you, you need to be aware, how do you present that to your new market and how do you present it to your audience?
I see. So just to resume this, to do a summary, the first step would be to look at yourself and decide what's normal for you. And it's also very important to understand why is that. Understand the perspective of why that makes it normal, because once you understand your perspective, you can be aware that somebody else may have a different perspective. And if I can give an example, and then you tell me if I'm right or no. You know, I'm coming from Eastern Europe, and Eastern Europe for a long time, till, you know, only like 25 years ago, was under communists. And under communists, travel was not allowed. Like you couldn't get out of the country. You couldn't travel, you know, unless you're like the president or something, you know, a very high role. Traveling was not allowed. So now I've noticed, you know, between my friends and the people I know, people from Eastern Europe, when they go to a job or to a business, to work or start, they are very motivated, like even more than salary. If you give them a bonus or a job where they get to travel around the world, that means the world to them. Much more than salary, and much more than than a company car or any other bonuses you'd give them. If you give them the chance to travel.
Yes, I completely agree.
Okay. So just to have it clear, understand why, and because that can help also in connecting with the people there, and, you know, in building a good team. And also in saving you money, you know, because a lot of people, you know, they try to just compensate everything with money, while a lot of people are not really motivated by money. You know, you got to give them something else.
And a lot of it, and this is important, thank you for bringing this up. So you have the traditional cultural values that do not change quickly, even over generations. However, what does change quickly are political economic circumstances. So Eastern Europe was in a certain political economic situation for 40, 50 years, and then course of history changed, which changes the motivational factors. I remember very well the mid-90s in Europe, traveling to Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic, and seeing how the young generation took over, how the young generation of Czechs took charge of their country. And you could see, it was almost an explosion of new business. And it was an explosion of optimism, which the neighbors to the south, Austria, and to the west, Germany, they didn't understand. They said, whoa, you're moving too fast. Are you sure this is good for you? And the young generation said, well, we've been in communist rule for 40 years, so now it's our time. So this is what's driving our behaviors now. So if you go to a different market, you also want to pay attention to how mature is this market? Is this a young, burgeoning economy that is still trying to accomplish certain economic standards? Or are we dealing with a very saturated market like Western Europe or like Japan or North America? And how do you motivate this market to buy? Is completely different than, let's say, dealing with China, Indonesia, Eastern Europe, South America.
Absolutely. So let's see, if we take an example of a company, say it's a company, take just a general, teaching about health and wellness, which is a big topic today. Yes, everybody wants to be healthy, everybody goes vegan, organic, and vegetarian, and all that stuff. So say a company, came up with some, some coaching systems and some products that are very good, for your body, and they want to promote them. They say they start putting together some small seminars, or they want to start a marketing campaign, and they want to sell it to these other different countries. So, and what would they do? Say they're going to start selling, sales agents over there. So the sales agent should first ask himself, why do I use this product, right? Why do I want to consume this, let's say this drink or this protein bar? And then once he understands that, he has to ask himself, would this person I'm selling to, would they have the same motivation like me to eat, to eat this, to consume this product, or to be interested in health? And from there, just go and adapt. And then you can say, how do I approach selling? What would sell me on it? Like what tactic? Would a tactic of, hey, come here and buy now, sell me? Or would maybe like a free sample sell me? And then, see what tactics works for them, understand why, and then ask themselves, would the same thing work for this country based on their economy and their culture and their background? Is that correct? Would that be a proper way of approaching business?
Yes, and I see two aspects that you're bringing up. One aspect is, first of all, understanding the target market. Is your market ready for this product? So when you talk about nutrition, you will find certain markets in the world that may not be receptive to that because they still struggle to produce enough food as it is that they cannot be picky and choosy about the types of food they produce and present their people. And the second piece would be, how do I build trust? Because every sales process needs to have establishment of trust. And this is the same across the world. Unless you have an immediate need that serves food or shelter that is important for survival, your customer is not going to buy from you unless they trust you to a certain extent. So how do you build trust with people from a different culture is something you need to prepare yourself for. Because in Eastern Europe, as you well know, trust building works quite differently than, let's say, in North America.
Absolutely.
Where people in North America, they will be very open and gregarious and loud, and they will smile all the time, and they will high-five you, and they will be enthusiastic. Well, if you do that on the streets of Moscow, you might get punched in the face because people think, yes, because people think you're not real, you're not genuine. So how to build trust, how to build rapport between people can be significantly different in a different culture. So you need to study that or get a coach that shows you how to do that. Okay,
so definitely in approaching different markets, you need different strategies. That's for sure.
Yes.
Correct? Now, when you do your seminars and your presentations, how do people approach? Like, what do they come and tell you? Do they tell you, I want to open a new store or a new company in this country, and then what do you ask them in order for you to decide what's the best presentation for them or the best workshop? How does that work?
Well, I'll give you a real life example because just today I finished a proposal for a new client, and they're not exactly a big company, but they're also not a small company. They build seats that go into cars or airplanes, and they are training a new production team in China. So they're building a production company in China, but it's not a Chinese company. So they have to teach their new team members in China how to produce the seats. I mean, I'm oversimplifying. So the reason that I was asked to join their effort was there are US Americans that they're going sent over to China to train the Chinese employees. Well, how do you transfer information? How do you transfer knowledge to a team that not only speaks a different language, but also reacts differently to leadership? How do they like to be managed? How do you lead somebody in another culture? That in the United States, you would try to include them, to enroll them in your mission. You would like to have brainstorming sessions, and you would like to encourage them to speak up and share their experience. Will that work in China? That's the question. The company's asking themselves, what do we need to do to be successful with our methods over there? So my team then will ask the client, so how many people are you sending? What is the leadership structure on the ground in China? How many team members did you hire in the last 6 months? What kind of technical training have they undergone? What's the language skills they have? Do they all speak English? Does your team speak Mandarin? So there is an array of questions and question marks that we need to sort out before we can get started. And then when we do, we tailor a program for, in this case, we're going to train the delegation that is going from the United States to China to train their Chinese team members. So we train the delegation. How do I present? How do I respond to feedback? Will I even get feedback from my Chinese colleagues? And how do I interpret it? How do I present my information in a way that my Chinese colleagues will receive it properly? And how do I have success on my mission?
Now, this delegation, do they speak Chinese, or they're going to use a translator? So is it okay to use an interpreter, or they have to speak the language of the country?
In this case, the delegation will speak English, and some of their Chinese colleagues will be able to understand English, and others will not, and they will have an interpreter, an English Mandarin interpreter in China. And that means that changes the way you present, because you can't just keep talking. You need to pause, and you need to wait for the information to land. So all of this needs to be taken into consideration. When you enter a new market, you're like a fish out of your water. You're not in your own pond anymore. You're swimming in a different water, and the water has a different temperature, and the nutrients in the water are different, and the fish you will meet look different, and they may eat you. So better be careful.
Yeah. And for this example you gave, say, how long will the training be? For how long are you going to work with these people from the delegation to get them ready to go from the US culture to the Mandarin culture, which is indeed two of the most different cultures there could be?
Well, in this case, this may not be the best example to use, but this case is a briefing which will have different modules, different elements. So overall, we will be spending 8 hours with them. That is by no means enough to get them ready, and they know that. So this is a very targeted briefing for a delegation that has one job. If we're bringing together teams, so if we're talking about bringing together a Chinese team with a North American team, how do you manage this? How do you motivate your team? How do you keep them in line? Then we'll be talking about more than one program. So these would be 2 or 3 day training programs, and they will be limited to 15, 20 individuals. So if there's more people that need to be trained, we do this multiple times. So it really depends on what scope of project we're dealing with and what kind of funding.
I see. Now, this and I don't know if that's correct or not. This sounds like a pretty big company. If they are producing seats for cars and airplanes, sounds like they have a big market. It's a big. How about if somebody would be somebody smaller? Say maybe I don't know, maybe an author just translated his book, from English. He said, I want to have it in Spanish too. I want to sell it maybe in South America, which is a big market. Um, how long, and if you would want, let's say he would want some advice on how to promote his book in North America, on what to put on his website, or maybe he's gonna do a session of book signing, like a smaller event, a smaller thing about promoting a book, or a small product. How, what would you recommend? Like, how much time would you need to work with that person to get him ready for something like this?
I think this could be done in half a day. For that kind of purpose, that would be done in half a day. I would certainly encourage that person to have all their online marketing translated, and not only translated, but localized. And a good translator will tell them there's a difference between just translating the language from one language into another, or transcribing it into the local market. So I think you know what I'm talking about when I talk about localization, making sure that the language that you use in your marketing materials really addresses the language that is spoken in the target market. And we gave the example of South America. So it's critical to use Spanish that is spoken and understood in these markets. So it's not the Spanish that is used in Europe. It's not Castellano. It is South American Spanish, and even within South America, you may want to pay attention. Is it Mexico or is it Argentina? Are you talking to a clientele in Colombia, or are we talking to a clientele in Paraguay? And for those of you who may have missed that, there's another big country in South America. They prefer another language, which is Portuguese. So if you're dealing with Brazil, you need to be aware of that. So just thinking that translating something into Spanish will help you in Brazil, it's only going to aggravate your potential clients because it shows of your ignorance.
Yeah, and they might feel offended even about that.
Every Brazilian, or almost every Brazilian, understands a little bit of Spanish, and they won't admit it. However, it's an insult to them if we as North Americans or Western Europeans assume that, oh, well, they'll speak Spanish. No, you want to address them in their native language.
And respect their individual language, even if they're similar, even if it's a similar language, absolutely. Okay, well, that's great. So you would work with a person, say you could coach somebody in like a half day, a few hours, you can give some advice about how they should approach. Say somebody's getting ready for a trip to promote their new book or their new business over there. You can work with one individual for like a half day and get him ready to at least feel confident when going there.
Yes, or maybe just over a course of coaching sessions, it would be, I don't know, it really depends on the project. We've done coaching programs that go for a year, and we've done coaching projects that are just a couple of months. It really depends on the scope of the project, and we can divide it up into half-hour, 45-minute coaching sessions over the course of a certain period of time to implement certain tactics. I don't want to call it traditional coaching, but it's taking the individual where they are and moving along with them, and then nudging them in a certain direction. Say, okay, try this behavior and see how that works, and then try that behavior and tell me your results, and then let's compare notes. So it's a process. However, if necessary, it can be done in one sitting. That would be 2 to 3 hours, and it would be a little more laser focused. It really depends on what the expectation of the clients are.
That sounds wonderful. And now we're getting close to our to our time, to our 30 minutes that we allowed for this interview. And I know, Christian, you have a gift for our audience. You want to tell us more about that?
Yes, so we will have for you a little white paper, I call it, on how to give feedback across cultures, because the way we respond to people is significantly different across the globe. So this little white paper will give you a glance of how to fine-tune the way you give feedback depending on which culture you're dealing with. And on top of that, I would like to offer the first 10 respondents who will get in touch with us a 30-minute consultation with me.
That's wonderful. Now, our listeners are going to see on the screen your website. Is that enough, just going on your website? Is that enough for them to, I don't know, put their email address and they'll get the document? Or should they email you? What should they do to actually benefit from your gift?
Perfect. If they go on the website, if you visit my website, and you'll see it, I guess we'll insert this here. There'll be a button on the website that says Get Started. And that's where you click. You say Get Started, and it'll get in touch with me or with one of our team members. On the top and on the bottom of the website, you'll see the email. It's Get Started at theculturemastery.com. That's how simple it is. Get Started at theculturemastery.com. And we'll be in touch with you to set this up.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Christian. And for our listeners, go ahead and take advantage, of this generous offer. Not only the document that you're going to get on how to give feedback in different cultures, but also 30 minutes with Christian or with somebody in his team. I'm sure that's priceless. So I'm going to go on your website right when we hang up here.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Christian, for your time. Again, this was Christian Hoeferle from the Culture Mastery. Do not hesitate to contact him. You can see his website on the screen. And I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having me, Carmen.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you for watching Entrepreneurs Conquering the World with your host, Carmen Ring.